Hello. So I have read the first 3 chapters of part 2 of The Disorderly Nights by Dorothy Dunnett because I couldn't stop reading. So that happened. So I don't really want to talk too much about it because it's 3 whole chapters and they were all relatively long-ish chapters. And lots of plot, like a whole bunch of plot in these chapters as well. We get there's like a cool map here, a new map of Malta. Lymond is being super quiet for a lot of this. I'm thoroughly enjoying this book so far, and I also love that Una's come back into this, and I actually really like Una in this book compared to the previous book, which I'll get to when we talk about her as well. I have more issues about Gilletta, which I'll also get to. I'm so sorry, I just do. It all begins with a bunch of men just waiting on Lymond to come in. They're all talking, basically it's Nicholas Durand, the Chevalier, and the Queen Dowager's little brother, Piero and Leone Strozzi. And they're all just wanting Lymond to go back to Malta with them because they have heard that the Turkish are about to set sail to attack Malta, essentially. There's a great line here regarding the description of Lymond by, I think, Piero Strozzi. Youth and bravado, Leone, are delicious assets. This regarding Lymond basically keeping the young Queen Mary alive. And Leonie's like, in the right place. So this is about the same time that Richard has just taken back Gilletta to Scotland. Lymond is described as a slender, wheaten-haired foreigner in virginal velvet with an affable expression. He's lost all of his puffy weight from being tatty boy, and okay, he's slender for a guy, so doesn't look particularly muscly, which maybe helps me imagine him dressed as a woman. Piero and Nicholas Durand, who had known him in his native land, could assess the changes in which the high living so forcibly described by his brother had brought. So there are some changes in Lymond that have occurred in France that people are noticing. So he still looks maybe less in shape, or I don't know, like why would he look different from this high life? Maybe he really does look like a little bit maybe not as tanned, doesn't look like he's been out in the sun much, I don't know. But yeah, definitely, if he's described as slender, maybe they just remember him when he was slender and more muscly, I don't know. They talk about all of this, but essentially we get to the point where Francis was wanting to go to Malta anyway because he'd found out that Una is there, or at least in Gozzo. And so Francis, I think, now has 2 reasons to want to go to Malta. Because he is kind of interested in meeting this Gabriel person, and maybe, I don't think he's interested in like necessarily fighting and defending Malta on behalf of the order. I think he's interested in getting involved in the business somehow, because it becomes clear that he knows a lot of people on both sides and he can somehow maybe influence people in a certain way. I still don't understand, like, yeah, what his goal would be militarily and politically going there, but he wants to see Una. He wants to make sure Una is okay. They meet the French ambassador to Turkey, who makes this comment in his head, in his POV. The Sultan of the Ottomans was a good deal more humane than any Christian prince he had discovered. I'm confused where they've got the information about the attack on Malta from. Who fed that back? Yeah, I actually don't know who. I'll have to read this again at some point. But I'm not sure how the French and Leone, and maybe it was Leone that told them, how they found out about the Turkish going to Malta. But anyway, they tell the French ambassador that. And there's comments that essentially the Spanish lord person of the Knights of the Order is not going to be helpful in that regard. There's a very cute, so they're on a sailing ship. Lymond on a ship with the wind in his hair. Lymond, who on leaving Marseilles had found a solitary spot of shade on the rambade and was occupying it, his eyes shut in thought. And then he opened them and suddenly rose. It's just such a beautiful picture. He has his eyes shut and he's thinking. It's good to know that Lymond actually has to spend time to think sometimes and sort out his mind, and he doesn't actually just think of everything on the fly. He's human too. But anyway, there's a fishing boat, and this was just so funny. He immediately knows that it's not a fishing boat, and also that as soon as it's found out not to be a fishing boat, he quickly figures out that he knows the people on it. That's just such a good moment, and I just love it. Because of course, like, he didn't just have 5 years of being a galley slave, he had 5 years of networking as a galley slave. He's like, how can I make the best of this situation? Become friends and understand as many people as I possibly can. And one of them was Thompson. And I love Thompson, especially because Lymond ends up hinting that he might have some ships and might need someone to sail those ships, and Thompson might be the person. Thompson also has this really great moment with Lymond where he's like, I know this really lovely woman in Algiers, and you should go there and I'll meet her. And Lymond's like, Thompson, you're a great friend. It's just that my other wives would object. Thompson just wants to know, like, have you got a lassie back there? Are you married yet? Have you a wife yet? I love it because he's got like full Scots type accent. It's just so great. These two Scotsmen just like yelling across the ship to each other in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, and everyone else is just like, what the actual hell are we witnessing right now? So I do think Thompson's going to come back into the story, that's for sure. Like, that just can't be a random encounter. They arrive at, not at Malta, but they arrive Messina, Porto de Messina. Lymond immediately leaves everyone as soon as they make port. And when he left, I was like, is he literally just like going to find the closest brothel because he knows the brothel women there and he wants to get updated on the goss? And they'll be so happy to see him because the line says, clothed in light braided silk. I don't know what braided silk is. Anyway, bought in France, he set off unescorted into the dark while the Chevalier de Villegnon, dressed at last in his black robe, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so Lymond goes off and we see him meet Jarrett. I love Jarrett. He's so cute. He's such a puppy dog. He's like Will Scott, but actually follows through with his morals. He's what Will Scott said Will was at the beginning, but then Will just kept confusing and contradicting himself, whereas I feel like Jarrett actually has stuck to everything that he has said he would. So what we find out is, I'm going to check this as well, because they fought together in the Battle of Solway Moss and they were just of age. So all I need to do is find out what the legal age of fighting in a war was for young boys or men in the 1500s in Scotland, add 9 years to that, and then I have Lymond's age. So that's what I need to find out. I think that it's 14, and that would make Lymond 23 in this book in 1551. But I will check, it might be 15, in which case Lymond will be 24, which actually feels a little bit more right to me. So we'll see. Blythe stood short, vivid, vital. Short? He's short? And stared at the self-possessed stranger before him. And then he said slowly, Francis Crawford, another random Scotsman that he finds. and darting forward sees those cool, relaxed hands. That's just such a beautiful reunion. I really loved it for both of them. Even though, you know, Jarrett's like, are you here to join? And Lymond's like, no. And this is like the most interesting thing about these few chapters is that like we're really coming to see that Lymond is secular in a way. Like or at least if he's religious, he shows no like favoritism or anything towards like a particular religion. And his whole family are like that. Like I've never really heard Sibylla or Richard say anything that like pious that actually defines their morality at all. In fact, we haven't really had that from anyone until this book with the Knights. And boy, do we get a lot of it. When Jarrett's like, are you, have you a mind that you might join us? Francis kind of like shuts him down and then says, look, your truly dedicated brothers are free to convert me if they can. So I don't think Lymond means convert to the Christian religion. I think he means convert to be that pious that he can actually be a knight and not break his oath. Lymond would hold the oaths of the Holy Knights for approximately 5.5 minutes. Okay, so there is a bunch of stuff where we're finding out that the Spanish commander guy of the Holy Knights is not believing about the attack coming to Malta and just doesn't help anyone at all ever. Gabriel and Lymond meet, and it's described as this on bottom of page 60. Between these two fair-headed men, between Gabriel's Viking dimensions, his radiance, his serenity, and the high-strung person of Francis Crawford, there passed no shock, no intuitive blaze of emotion. There ain't no chemistry between them. I think there is a fundamental misunderstanding between them. Because what I'm coming to understand here, Lymond recognised that de Villignon had not only the confidence of Gabriel's support, behind Gabriel he saw God. So what all of the men see behind Gabriel is literally the hand of God or the voice of God. And so the missing cogs here that Lymond doesn't have, but everyone else has, is that at the bottom line, these men are about faith and God, and the Christian God, I should say. What I've now figured out, like through reading this chapter and the next chapter, is that Lymond and Gabriel are so similar in how they think, in how they logic things out, in how they plan attacks, and also do the right thing by people. But to a point. There comes a point where what's going to happen, I predict, is that when, excuse my language, shit hits the fan and something's going really wrong, the part of me thinks that what is going to happen is Gabriel would then turn around and say, well, this is God's plan. If I am to die here, if this is how I am to go, if this is how my comrades are to go, I will accept that, and I know that I am going to go to heaven, etc. Or I know that I'm doing the right thing. This was my fate. I'm going to have faith in my God. And to that, Lymond would be like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I'm not buying that. He would be like, okay, mate, there's actually stuff we can do. If you keep thinking like that, we're going to fail. So I think they're really similar up to a point, and that point is where there are going to be some circumstances where faith is actually going to then take over Gabriel, and Lymond is going to get so frustrated at that. He already is getting frustrated at that. We have this one moment where, I think it's in chapter 3, where they're preparing for battle as the ships are coming to Malta, and Lymond is like trying to explain why he wouldn't wear armor, and Gabriel is just like so associating the armor with the might and hand of God that he couldn't possibly not wear it, despite how impractical it is. So Gabriel is practical up to the point of making sure that he thinks he's still doing the right thing by his God. including not really speaking up to, I'm going to stop saying the Spanish commander because he has a name, Homades, Grand Master of the Order. He's not standing up to Homades as much as one would think Gabriel might, being the practical guy that he is in every other way, because he truly probably believes that Homades was appointed by God and that there is a reason that Homades is leading at the moment. And then he respects that because he respects God. And that is going to drive Lymond absolutely bonkers. Whether or not you are a believer in God, or whether or not Lymond is truly agnostic or actually does believe in a God, the god of brothels, there's a level of practicality of when you're like, okay, this person is actually just in the wrong place and they shouldn't be leading, and oh, they were appointed by God, so even though they're terrible leaders, I will have faith in my God that there's a reason that we're doing what they're saying. Like there is a fine line between stupidity there and faith, and I have a feeling that there's going to be some instances in the future where Gabriel just does not strike that correctly in front of Lymond. Okay, so moving on. There's a cute little scene where Lymond actually goes and explores Malta, which is nice. We also get like an inside look on Lymond actually exploring a place, because like usually we just are given an outcome where Lymond just happens to know everything about everything, and you're like, how does he do that? Well, that's because he actually gets on the ground with his 2 feet and tries to understand everything that he possibly can. So we're actually delivered his POV as he's exploring the island, which sounds very hot and not particularly hospitable. See what I did there? Centuries ago, appealing for a new crusade, the cry had been, "God desires it." But which God? Francis Crawford inquired pensively of each silent street of closed doors. The way this is coming across is that it's not explicitly stated, but I think Lymond is like, I'm not convinced that he is, I think he's quite secular, really. Like, he really doesn't seem to have a preference here. But which God? Francis Crawford inquired pensively of each silent street of closed doors. And then he makes the point that if you have a battle between Muslims and Christians, both with no profession, no ideological flaw on either side, the sheer weight of numbers must tell. Which is to say that, like, it doesn't really matter what your faith is in a battle, like, it's going to be who has the greatest might. Maybe he just really feels like religion is stupid and creates, I think, or at least at the very least, he sees how ridiculous the politics of religion is. When humans create a hierarchy based on religion, that's where the problems begin. And I think that's what Lymond recognises, regardless of what he truly believes. And he sees it across every religion. There's a little cute moment here. Gerrit Blythe spent a good deal of time out of curiosity at Lymond's side. I also just wonder, does Gerrit know about everything that happened to Lymond, like after Solway Moss? So Gerrit has met Una, who he refers to as that woman. And when he brings it up to Lymond, kind of wants to get a reaction from Lymond, but Lymond doesn't react. It's almost a bit masochistic what Gerrit is doing. Like, he kind of wants to know how debauched Lymond is, but at the same time doesn't want to, like, it must be so painful for him to hear. Like, I think Gerrit is both appalled maybe at what he's heard about Lymond and also envious, and those two things are an interesting mix of emotions to have when you are a 20-something-year-old completely pious male. Francis keeps avoiding the topic of Una. Now we have Gabriel talking. Gabriel likes to give like just little mini snippets of pious lectures. He says, We here on this fragment of rock are the shield of Christianity, of culture, of humanity, of all the great arts for which men have died. Here we go. Oh my God, if I actually heard someone say that in real life, I would be like, someone punch that person in the face right now. Think of that and don't despise us. We are not simpletons. We are men as you are. Do you think that I am human too? Do you think my vows are simple to keep? I think Gabriel is really smart. I think he thinks he can appeal to Lymond and manipulate Lymond to think about him a certain way, but I don't know. A part of me thinks he underestimates Lymond. But there is that fundamental disagreement between the two. I think the bottom line, that Lymond is always going to choose practicality and I think the better outcome for people based on the fact that that is the better outcome and nicer outcome for people. Whereas Gabriel is probably going to try and choose the better outcome for people, but only because he thinks that's what God would want. And that is a big difference. Gabriel's like, God forgive me, I've embarrassed you and myself too. And Lymond is like, I've been embarrassed? Like, what? Lymond, it would be very hard to embarrass someone who has spent years of their life as a galley slave rowing naked beside a bunch of other naked slaves. I'm sorry, but that's just hard to embarrass. But he keeps quiet. Lymond is keeping so quiet. There's a note from Una who says, don't come. Gabriel says to Jarrett, don't tell Lymond that it came from me, because Gabriel's like wanting to control Lymond's thoughts. But Jared actually, for starters, finds himself that he can't lie. I think because he just generally would feel bad about lying and wants to tell the truth. Jarrett Blythe, to his own surprise, found himself incapable of a straight lie. Jared is actually just probably a really good guy. And he's just like, I can't lie. I can't just lie. But also doesn't want to make an enemy of Lymond. He would be an uncomfortable enemy to make. That is a very good observation. Then in chapter 3, we get Una's POV, which was lovely. I really liked it. I've never actually enjoyed reading much about Una, but now there's this great line. I feel like she's had a hard life and she's very practical. Soiled and disillusioned, she was sent to look for freedom, space, sun, escape, loving wisdom if such were to be found, kindness and friendship if it were not. She has finally escaped to this life that she's wanting, all because I would say, like, Olimro. That's what Olimro did for Una. But we find out she is pregnant. She was initially happy because Cormac's shadow was lessening and the shadow of Francis Crawford of Lymond, who with such damnable detachment during his sojourn in France had shown her Cormac for what he was and what he should have been. Wow, such a great line. Like, Lymond came through detached but just said, hey, Cormac is kind of a terrible guy. He could have been this and he ain't. What are you going to do about it? That's kind of the attitude that Lymond did take around Una a lot, which doesn't leave Una in a useful position, because Una's probably extremely aware of that, but she's helpless, you know? This was Lymond not being at his best as Teddy Boy. She also has this view of Lymond always doing things for his own ends. He's an agent for his own ends. So whatever divided her from Cormac, and also prompted Olimro to help Una, she thinks it's because Lymond is just selfishly using people for his own ends, and it just suited him to break up Una and Cormac. She wished to forget him because she liked him. But anyway, she kind of finds like mini-like with this new guy, Galatian, a Spanish guy. And they actually just have like a really cute time together on the ship. A lot of these knights aren't as pious as they make themselves out to be. We have once again like another sex scene where like you could almost read it and not realize what you're reading. I kind of like their relationship, but yeah, she's pregnant. I'm like, how do we know she's not pregnant with Lymond's baby? We will know when it comes out, I guess. Because she's like a thick black-headed Irish hog child lay in her belly. Why not a blonde Scottish one? Ugh, poor Una. Like, she's finally escaped somewhere and now she's in the middle of nowhere in a hot place and very pregnant. And it's not going to be good for her because now having a baby is just... Baby out of wedlock is just going to change all of her options and everything she could possibly have done. So, yeah, it's really bad. And apparently it looks like there was a line somewhere where she actually tried to deal with the pregnancy but only ended up making her sick. So she must have sought out some herbs or something or medicine to try and have like a self-made abortion. No. She was going to hell, it seemed, in her own way, and she wanted none of Francis Crawford's cutting rebukes. The reason she doesn't want Lymond around is because she doesn't want to see him to see that she's in, honestly, such a terrible position, the position she did not think she was in, and she's, I think, ashamed of it. You know, she was given freedom and kind of, I think she feels like she screwed it up. And I just feel so sad for her. Una O'Dwyer kind of takes the lead by putting the idea into Galatian's head that he is the leader. Praise be, I wonder what your captains will say to this, my brave child. I will have the council room made ready for you. Like, she's encouraging Galatian to like, hey, we should do something about this, which is, I assume, then the boats that get sent to Malta with the women and children are because Una basically prompted Galatian to make that move. Of course, Homades doesn't like that. He says, how do you suppose these poor men of Gotso will fight if we withdraw the very thing they want most to save? Send these people back. It's actually not a bad point, but it's just very evil. I've never thought about it that way before with war. I've never had to plan a war, believe it or not. So then everyone's like, oh, please, Graham or Gabriel, can you please lead us? And once again, Gabriel is just like, there is nothing material to be gained by rebellion now. Which is kind of true. Like, it would be really bad if suddenly they started to rebel within their order whilst they were getting attacked. But the real reason he said that is that we should not be accused of personal ambition. Did you not say once, I vow to God? And then he basically starts praying and kind of defends the Spanish Homades by saying, like, can you not see that the best leader in the world could not in the last weeks have forced the emperor to give us the ships and troops? Why am I not taking over this order? Gabriel is like, because you are in your 20s, because the order is 400 years old and patient. The order has survived weak leadership before, it will again. Like, his faith here in the order and in God's plan is just so impractical, and I can feel the cringe coming from Lymond at this point. And then they all just start praying, and great. So his weakness is his piousness. Okay, and then the boats arrive. I love it how, like, Gabriel has his own house and Jarrett, Blythe and Lymond are just sleeping in the same room, and as soon as the bells ring they both like get up at the same time. That's just such a super cute detail that they're sleeping in the same room. And it's details like this that just kind of make me distrustful of Gabriel as they're going off to fight. Gabriel, always though taller than most, Graham Mallet gave away the advantage of height. So what he does is that he's talking to Lymond but then hoists Lymond up onto the horse to then have Lymond above him so that he doesn't feel imposing upon Lymond. And Lymond, who had no need for either the hoist up onto the horse or like needing to be higher than the other person, found the courtesy to use both and said at length, looking down. Anyway, we don't need to go into that, but essentially Lymond is just like seeing through all of these little tricks that Gabriel has. Like, Gabriel likes for other people to feel powerful around him. I don't think that Gabriel does it to manipulate people. I think he genuinely does that out of being kind. Like, I do think that Gabriel is a really kind person. He comes across like that. It's just that it's misplaced for the wrong reasons. Like, I think Gabriel thinks that he should be kind because that's what God would want him to be and this is how he should behave, rather than it's just the right thing to do. I love this line that Lymond says, "As for the cross, my habit is to fight for the saltire." Oh, that's so great. And also kind of a slap in the face. So, as the attack is coming, I have this issue where back in Scotland, Gilletta Mallet, who had been on edge all day, apologised for the inattention, and she says, "I feel there's something wrong, I don't know what. When I felt like this, it used to be Graham who was in danger." And Tom is like, "Oh my god, if Graham's in danger, doesn't that mean Francis is too? Oh no." Which is cute, but I just have, this is so kind of woo-woo for me. Like, it's really woo-woo. It's like, oh, I feel it in my chest. I feel that it's going to rain today. Like, I feel, this reminds me of a fortune teller, or like, yeah, something super woo-woo. You're telling me that Gilletta can actually sense when across on the other side of the world, her loved one is in danger. Like, I really don't buy that, and it just makes me not like her even more. We have had kind of woo-woo stuff in Queen's Play when we came across I forget the name, the house that Lymond went to when he was really injured, with the older woman who seemed to know his grandmother, or at least know Sibylla, and she had like kind of a mind reading crystal ball thing going on. But I genuinely think that she had that going on because she was actually really intuitive and smart and could kind of just predict things because she could. Like, if we're actually saying, I don't know, like, I just read this and I was like, okay, right, you can feel something's wrong on the other side of the world. I don't know if anyone got annoyed by that. It's just, up until now in the book, everything has been so practical, and like, you wouldn't know what's happening on the other side of the world because you just wouldn't. But like, now this perfect girl also has some sort of superpower. I don't know. I will contain myself. I will try to contain myself. People keep saying to Lymond, "Gabriel thinks a lot of you." They keep trying to butter Lymond up. So Lymond goes out with Upton, Upton's pretty cool. And he's super obedient. Like, Lymond is just like riding around in his leathers, like delivering messages around, being very versatile and flexible and quick, because he's like the only one without like 100 pounds of plate armor in the hot sun, so he can ride fast and turn around fast, and he's not wearing down his horse or himself in the sun, and they're picking off all these little raiding parties of Turks. And then, of course, because Nick Upton is probably a relatively on the unfit spectrum, and I'm assuming like middle-aged or older man, he has a heart attack. I initially thought maybe he'd been injured, but no. As soon as like he came off his horse, I was like, oh, this is proving the point, like, and Lymond says the same thing, that the Order of the Knights Hospitallers of St. John of Jerusalem, Rhodes and Malta killed this one. So he dies, Upton, which honestly was actually sad. He seemed pretty cool. So he died, Upton, and Lymond, who had just, you know, rejected the whole armor thing and argued against it, now has like proof that, hey, this is actually impractical. Like, did your god really want this? Like, okay, it's true that this guy might have had a heart attack no matter what. I mean, I'm not against people wearing armor if people are firing arrows at them. Like, I don't actually know how much trouble they were in, but Lymond was happy to ride around in leathers, so he obviously wasn't too worried about arrows at that point. So it seems like the armor is being worn just as a pride thing. Anyway, so the whole like population of Malta, Maltese people, who never really wanted the Knights to be there because that has made their life literally not very nice and definitely not peaceful, all get evacuated to the Tower, which is basically undefended, but there's like 2 or 3 Knights there. And when they send for help, because we find out here that Dragut actually has orders to initially go to Sicily and then go down to Tripoli, but on the way, go to Malta and see if you can do any damage. He has been mainly given orders to go to Tripoli and not necessarily Malta to like spend a lot of resources trying to bring down, but it's more like, oh, on your way to Tripoli, if you can like really hurt Malta, that would be nice. So somewhere along the line, information has been fed incorrectly to the French, who thought that he was just coming to Malta. Like, you can kind of tell that these Turks, they weren't too serious about getting onto Malta. They were kind of like, we'll land here, see if we can burn some stores. And they kind of beat us back after Lymond charged at them. But hey, all the civilians are up there, so why don't we just go kill all the civilians, and then at least it feels like we've done something. And well, Dragut is taking revenge, like a personal revenge on the death of his brother. But you know, it wasn't actually like an organized attack. He's not putting all his effort into this. So somewhere along the line, like, Homades was right. Like, they're not going for Malta. They're going for, like, they're not coming for Malta. Well, he's wrong in that they're still going for Tripoli, and now Tripoli is massively undefended. So I assume that we're going to Tripoli after this. I can tell by the chapter titles. Hang on. Yes, we go to Tripoli after this. Anyway, they go try to kill a whole bunch of the actual Maltese population. Homades doesn't care. But at least I'm happy that Gabriel and Nicholas Durand basically step up, and I think it's Nicholas Durand who asked for like 100 men, but he said he can only take 6. And as soon as I was like, okay, well, Lymond is going in that little crew of 6. And so it is Lymond, Gerrit Blythe, Gabriel, Nicholas Durand, and a couple of other people, or 3 other people, who are now going to this tower to defend the Maltese people who are boxed in by all of the Turks and getting picked off one by one whenever they try to escape. And the last thing we get in this chapter is a prayer to the Lords, and there's a soft fivefold amen. Fivefold. Okay, so Lymond is not saying amen. And then they easily sneak into this tower because for no seasoned Turkish captain, not even Dragut himself, did it occur that any man, unless he came with an army, would desire to enter Medina now. So Medina is where all of the townspeople are. There must be some tower there or something, which is where they are. Okay, what I think is going to happen is something's going to go wrong where Francis and Gabriel have a big disagreement as to what happens, whether this is now or in Tripoli. I kind of want, like, Francis is going to have this practical answer, and then Gabriel's going to have a faith-based answer, even though they both are very practical people up to a crucial point, and one of them is going to come out on top or not. And I kind of want Lymond to not come out on top. But yeah, this is driving me mad. I really hope that Gilletta is not like her brother in that way. Overall, I really love this style of book because it's very different to Queen's Play, which is... Queen's Play didn't have this like forward momentum, like, oh my gosh, event, plot, like plot event, circumstance, reaction, next plot event, next bad thing, reaction. Whereas this book is so far just like bang, bang, bang. Something happens, the reaction. Something happens, the reaction. And so it's very much like action based at this point. So yeah, I quite like it. I'll see you next time.